Hello, everybody. It is I, Sig Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and Gold Gremlin of SigTrent Games. Today, we're going to talk to you about what's going on with SigTrent Games this week in week 22 of our operations. I will be giving you a little bit of game design advice, and I'll talk about my life in general and what I've been playing. So let's start with the news for SigTrent Games. There's not a whole lot to cover here. I've been working on Shotgun Fantasy, writing in the Isekai section, describing how Isekai play works and what kind of stories you can tell, specifically focusing this week on the types of different worlds that you can find yourself transported to as a hero in an Isekai story. So that's what I've been up to, and I'm starting to do my homework on various famous Isekai stories from all of history and in the modern age so that I can recommend inspiration for players. So that's what I've been doing this week, and will probably be continuing to do this week, and then I'll be moving on to rounding out mechanics and things like that. I'm going to put out a playtest document pretty soon. I'm thinking it'll probably be next week, but maybe at the end of this week, so that we can start getting some playtests going and have people make characters and review the material and give me some feedback. So if you're interested in that, please jump on the Discord and let me know you want to do some playtesting. I'll let you know. I know some people kind of don't like spoilers and they just want to see things come out, and they don't want to see it until it's in final form, and other people would like to see how the sausage is made and come join the party. So I do welcome both sorts of fans. I have a name for the LPJ product that's Lewis Porter Jr. Games that goes along with Shotgun Fantasy, and that's just going to be called Modern Magic. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to name products in my game design advice section. So we'll get into the details of how I came up with the name Modern Magic. Not that it's exactly a complicated name, but there is a process I go through to figure out what to call things. So we'll get to that when the time comes. Other than that, I did a review last week, or not a review, an interview last week with Random Worlds. Random Worlds is an internet online RPG community. They started as an IRC channel, and now they're a Discord channel. And they host weekly, or more than weekly, Q&A sessions with game designers and people in the business and industry. So that was pretty fun. I didn't get a lot of questions outside from the host, but I did have a good time, and I talked a lot about Shotgun Fantasy and did a pretty good job, I think, in encapsulating what I consider to be the selling points of it as a game. So it was good practice for me for marketing, and gives us some nice copy to share with people to promote the game. So that was very kind of them to give us a slot on their schedule. And hopefully we'll be back on Random Worlds again in the near future. I am going to be trying to reach out to different media outlets when Shotgun Fantasy starts to go on pre-sale, that kind of thing, and drum up support. So we'll do the circuit, do the rounds. I really like doing interviews, actually, and going on different shows and things like that. But it does take a fair bit of time commitment to schedule all the events and to participate in them. So we won't do that until we're good and going on the books content. All right, game design tip of the week, and it's going to be about naming products. How do you name products? I have a lot of other tips about how you name things within games, but we're going to talk about how do you name the game itself or a game book that you're working on. It can be a tricky thing, and I think the first thing to discuss is how important is a name on a product. I think different people will tell you different answers to that. It's always worth thinking about. You should always put a good amount of thought into picking a name because it doesn't take forever. It's not an especially long process, and you're likely to get some good returns from having a good name. So I think it's worthwhile. Name can definitely help a lot. It can also hurt a product if you have a name that's misleading or one that turns people off. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it is not essential. Certainly there have been games with not very great names that have become quite popular, or names you would look at and go, it doesn't really seem like a cool name. It doesn't match any of the name qualities, but it ends up working anyway. So branding is its whole art, and naming is a big part of branding. But I think generally speaking, while a name is important, it can definitely enhance your product. It is far from the most important thing. Best thing is to make a really good product. If it's good enough and you can get it into people's hands, then the name will become irrelevant. But names are helpful in marketing, so it's definitely worth thinking about. So what should a good name do? What are the qualities that it might have? First of all, it should be memorable. So when you hear the name, it should stick in your brain, if at all possible. There are many ways to make a name memorable. It can be emotionally evocative, so it can have a name that really shocks you. It could have a really unusual, weird name that sticks in your mind because you've never heard anything like it, like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, for instance. I remember that name. Why? Because it's weird. Does it have any meaning to me? No, not really. Is it a catchy mnemonic? No, it isn't, but still sticks in your brain. However, something like Dungeons and Dragons, where we've got two words that start with the same letter and they also have a connection to each other because there might be dragons in dungeons, well, that's going to be very catchy mnemonically, and for good reason. It became one of the more powerful games. And there were other games at the time. Let's see, like Tecamel was another game of its era. Was Tecamel super popular and well known? No. Is that an easy name to remember? No, not particularly. It still has its fans. It still sold many copies. It is widely regarded by some old school D&D people as one of the cooler games that was ever made. So nothing wrong with it. But is it a really catchy, easy to understand name? No, not particularly. Next up, it should hopefully describe the product in some way. Now, Tecamel does that. That's the name of the world that the game is about, so it is descriptive. But if you are not already introduced to the idea of Tecamel, you don't know what it means. But Dungeons and Dragons, are there dragons in a D&D game? Often. Are there dungeons? Yes, generally. So it's a nice descriptive thing. You kind of know what you're getting when you pick up Dungeons and Dragons. Shotgun Fantasy, pretty similar. We all know what a shotgun is. We know what a fantasy world is. We can imagine shotgun plus fantasy stuff and get an idea of what's going to be in that game. Of course, you can't describe everything about a product. You get like, 1 to 7 words to do it. And a RPG product might have hundreds of thousands of words inside of it. So there's a limited amount that you can describe a product. But you at least want to give people an idea of what they're getting. Evoke a feeling. That's really important. If a game like Shadow Dark, well, it's there in the name. It's going to be shadowy. It's going to be dark. The artwork is going to reflect that. The theme of the adventure is going to reflect that. Exploring the darkness, etc. So that evokes a good feeling, which is exactly the feeling that the product is trying to get across. Shotgun Fantasy sounds like action. I showed it to somebody who's not a gamer and said, what do you think about this name? And they're like, whoa, it sounds action-y and exciting. I'm like, great, because that's kind of the way I try to write games, and that's the everyday heroes kind of zeitgeist. So perfect. It evokes the right feeling. Also, you want it to elicit interest, and this is to like drive curiosity. And here's where a weird name could be really good. When you hear Tecamel or Lamentations of the Flame Princess, you're like, what is that? And that can get you to dive in and learn more about the game. Pick up the copy, look at the back cover. Goes really well if you have an interesting piece of art to go with your interesting title, and you're going to draw people in and get them to check things out, right? So curiosity is a great force in getting people interested in a game and in marketing a game. So it could do that. Now, can a title do all of these things at once? I suppose that's possible, but it's pretty difficult. So just going to feature the thing so long as it's checking off some boxes somewhere, then it's got a good candidate for a name. So let's talk about the things like a name probably shouldn't do. Shouldn't evoke anger, right? So your name should not piss people off. That's a pretty obvious thing, but occasionally people run afoul of that and they're like, haha, it'd be funny, it'll attract attention because it's an evocative name. We might get some publicity and controversy. True. Are you going to sell a lot of copies of that piss off name? Probably not very many. So if your aim is to just attract attention and not to build a long-term franchise and sales over time, sure, I guess you could do that. But generally speaking, your name should not make people angry or feel bad. Shouldn't give false impressions. So you really don't want to name a game Shotgun Fantasy and not have any fantasy elements and not have any shotguns in it, right? That would be bad. And it's quite possible, actually, that my game will not have any actual shotguns in it. So we will have to put shotguns in the art, which we have done, and put shotguns in the ideas behind the game a little bit. And we'll mention the name of the game a whole lot. But the shotguns are actually provided by the Everyday Heroes core rule system and the armory. and other books that have modern stuff in it, which is why we don't need to have a lot of them in the game. So is that misleading? Maybe a little bit, a little bit. If somebody picks up the game, they don't realize it's an expansion. That might be a problem. And so how do I address that? In the very early opening parts of the book, I say very explicitly what this book is and that it doesn't contain a lot of modern world-building stuff, because you're going to find that in other products that you probably should already have if you're playing Shotgun Fantasy. Next up, the most important thing that a name should not do is infringe on somebody else's trademark. So here's where we have to dive into a little bit of lawyeliness. I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, but I've named a lot of things and dealt with trademark and read a lot of the rules surrounding it. The basic idea is pretty simple. You do not want your product to be confused with somebody else's product. So within a market that you are selling to, which could be a geographical location. Now, a lot of RPGs, you hope to sell them all over the world, especially these days, so that's a big area. And within a particular market, in this case, role-playing games, but that could end up including computer games, other games, fantasy books, anything that has a good connection to what you're doing. You don't want your product to have a very similar name, because it could be confused with that other product. And that is the whole goal of trademark law, is to avoid consumer confusion about what you are buying. You want to know what it is and not be leeching off of somebody else's brand identity or giving them a bad reputation or anything like that, right? So that's why trademark law exists. So you want to be very careful. So if you are going to put out an RPG product, go on to Google and search. Sometimes with RPGs, they're not going to be the top things that come up. So you might want to go to a more specialized search like Drive-Thru-RPG. You shouldn't just rely on one location to do your search. You should check most of the major markets where things are being sold and do some general Google searches. Maybe you type in TTRPG, name of the product, variations on the name of the product, etc. See what comes up. It's just kind of the best way to do initial research. You can also go look through trademark listings. It's a lot more complicated to do. It's actually a lot harder to find what you're looking for a lot of the time. And then, as you start talking about your product, you may get fans or other people that go, oh, I think there was already a product like that with that name. And so it's really important that you go follow up that lead if somebody says something like that. So when you're first marketing things, be prepared maybe to have to change the name. And that happened to us at Evil Genius Games a few times. We had a name for a product, and then it turned out there was another RPG already that was using that name, and we couldn't do it. So it can be kind of tricky. You need to know what you're doing. Now, it's really nice, actually, if you're licensing something like Highlander. Well, obviously, if we're licensing the Highlander name, then we can make a Highlander game. We are legally entitled to do that by the person that owns that trademark. And so even if there was another Highlander game, which there wasn't, then you could also have a similar name because you're both licensing the same thing for the same people with the same permission, etc. It is also possible you could go to a trademark holder and go, hey, look, I want to release a new game. Will you give me permission to use your trademark? They'll usually want to get money for that, which is fair. But you should definitely, if you want to try to do that, go through that process and sign a contract and get an official license to use it. I usually prefer to just try to come up with my own name. So how do I do it? How do I go about picking a name? Well, the first thing is I make a list. I just make a list of names. I start with like the feelings that I want to have, stuff that describes the product well, stuff that is mnemonically interesting or easy to remember, and stuff that might elicit interest, right? So I just go down all those things. And not every name does everything, but I want to have something that supports each of those ideas in my list of names, right? So I make a list. I would say usually I got like 6 or 7 items on there, but I am prepared to add more items. I might see stuff during my research looking for those names and find other products that I can do a variation on that is not going to infringe on their trademark, but they'll inspire me to another name for a product. Things like that. You can also just search a dictionary and look for synonyms for that word. And that'll give you different ideas that might lead you down a cool path to pick up a cool name. And just be open to interesting stuff that other people, you get other people to give you potential names, describe the product to them, go, well, what should that be called? Make your list. Okay. Once you have your list, check it for infringement. Just go down each item, maybe rate it. You go, I think it's a 3 out of 5 name. It's not the best, but it's all right. And then check it for infringement. And if it's infringing, you just got to take it off the list. If it's too close to products that already exist, you just be done with that name and throw it away. Maybe use it for inspiration to get variations or something, but you can't use that one or anything too close to it, right? Then run it by other people. Take your best ones that you've got that aren't infringing, think are pretty cool. Ask some other people who you think can give you a good opinion. Sometimes you want the opinion of people who are experts in RPG products. Sometimes you want the opinion of people who don't know anything about RPG products, because those could be potential customers. Or they could be people who have experience. Like I asked my boss at the gift shop about the name of my game, because he sells games. He doesn't play them, but he sells them. To go, is this something you would stock in your store? Because that's really important, right? And he was like, yeah, it's really, so if I sold like action games, I'd get this. He doesn't generally, so he might not stock that one, but it got the right feeling, and so I knew that was a good candidate. Finally, be wary of temporary names. So a lot of the time you'll have a temporary project name. We did this a lot at Evil Genius Games. If that is too good of a name, it can kind of stick to the product, even if it's not the best name you can choose. And if you talk about it with customers, they'll start to use that product name. And then if you want to change it, you get some confusion and you get some difficulty. So if you're going to pick a project name, pick something kind of nonsensical, something that isn't a good candidate for a name. I think Microsoft, they would call it, oh, this is Project Sierra, right? And they're never going to put out an operating system called Sierra, right? Maybe they will. Maybe they did. I don't know. But they would pick city names or something random, just because it's not going to cause that kind of confusion. And then when they introduce the actual name, there's going to be a really clear distinction between that temporary name and the actual name of the product, right? And everyone knows what they're dealing with. So watch out for those temporary names. Just either keep them very internal, or don't use them widely, or pick them as being something very arbitrary. So that's the deal. So how did I come up with Modern Magic? Well, it was on my list. It's very descriptive of the product. It has magic in it, and it is about modern day, so modern magic. I was shocked that that was not a name that had been used for an RPG product that I could find readily, so it seems pretty safe. A lot of the other cooler, more specific names I did come up with do have products out there, like Street Magic. There's a Shadowrun supplement called Street Magic that's going to be pretty similar to what I'm doing. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it's similar enough that it could cause confusion, right? So that name's right out. There were some others like Club Magic. That sounds pretty cool, and like nightclub stuff, and on the streets kind of magic, which is sort of what a lot of the stuff is themed about. But it could be confused with, I don't know, magic you use to enchant a club, and that's not an impression I want to give. So I don't want to have that false thought, because who wants to buy that book, right? Maybe if you really did a great cover art or something, you could get people into it. But it didn't sound like a good idea. So I just went through all these different things, and there was the original name for the content that LPJ sent me to adapt into this book, which is where a lot of the ideas for the spells that'll be in there come from. I tend to rewrite everything he gives me just because I have my own style of writing, but I'll use the ideas and draw inspiration from what he did, because he's a clever guy and a good game designer. He comes up with a lot of cool ideas. And that was called Urban Magica, I believe. And it's a pretty good name, but he's got it on like 6 different products already. And so I didn't want there to be confusion between this book for Everyday Heroes and those books for D20 Modern. And so gave it a slightly different name, because he had a bunch of them. So yeah, I just thought it would be better for this to have a new name, and it's going to be quite a bit different than that series. It's not really like a sequel to those exactly or anything. So that's an area where it wouldn't be copyright infringement, because he obviously owns that name, right? That's not a problem if he's going to be putting out a book with that. But I did think there would be kind of a conflict for buyers. I don't want somebody going and trying to find the Everyday Heroes book and end up buying the D20 Modern version, right? That would not be so good. And it'd just be a customer headache for him to have to refund and make those changes, right? So something distinct. And that's how I came up with Modern Magic. Now, if somebody happens to reply to this video, oh, I actually own a copy of Modern Magic for XYZ game system, well, then I'll have to go back to the drawing board and look at my list again. So keep your list, because sometimes you have to make changes after you announce the name of the product. All right, so that's that. Let's talk about playing games this week. What have I been doing? The main game that I've been playing is MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. So I bought that last week on the Steam Summer Sale. You drive around in big stompy mechs and blow stuff up. It is satisfying. It's pretty fun. I'm starting to see kind of the limits of the game engine, at least with the expansions that I have. Still fun. I've in no way kind of done with it. I haven't finished the campaign. Still, I would say probably pretty early. I've only just tangled with the main enemy that they establish at the beginning of the game, and I don't even know that'll be the ultimate battle is to defeat those guys, or whether it'll be to defeat the people that are hiring those guys, because it's another mercenary group. But I had my first contact with them. I don't have any assault mechs yet, but I do have a couple of Warhammers, which are pretty big mechs in that game, 70 of 100 tons. And I can field multiple teams of mechs now. So I can do a mission, my mechs get kind of beat up, and then I can do another mission with a different set of mechs. And that gives me a little bit more versatility as a mercenary. I don't have to run away and repair my mechs again all the time. I can kind of have some repairing while I'm fighting with others. So it's pretty fun. A lot of the Battletech and MechWarrior games are part mercenary company economic simulator and part battle game. So it sort of has the two halves where you develop your mech forces, you pay your mercenaries, you grow your contracts and your reputation, and on the other half, you have battles. And if it's Battletech, they're like turn-based battles. If it's MechWarrior, they're real-time battles. That's just how those series go. I do wish someone would shake that formula up. Those games have been like that for maybe a little bit too long. That's just my opinion as a consumer, not as a game designer necessarily. Sometimes if you change up the way you do your game and people like the old one, they're like, I don't like it. It's not like the old one that I used to love. That's a real problem. But maybe we need to have a new series with a name somewhere in between. We call it Inner Sphere or Clans or I don't know what. That is mech action, but just approaches it in a slightly different way or has a different way that campaigns play out. I would hope for something a little more story-driven, still allows for player choice into what stories I want to get involved in and how they have confluence with each other. But the way this one works, it often feels a little unrealistic because, like, oh, we have an urgent attack and we need your mercenary company to help us. But it's going to take 30 days to travel there, and you might have to stop to shop for some mechs. It's like, what is happening with the story while I'm off gallivanting and managing my mercenary company? The war should be long over by the time I get there. But in this universe, everything waits for me. And that feels weird and takes me out of the story. So I wish it was just, I don't know, a little more like, oh, I choose to get involved in this campaign. And once you're in the campaign, it's a long series of things that kind of advances you, both as a mercenary company, etc. And then once you're finished with that campaign, you're kind of open and available for another one, but you're going to choose where you go to and you don't move around so much between, I don't know, just some different ideas because the formula is a little stale, I think. Anyway. Also, I'm going to start talking about what Nomad Ann, and that's my lovely wife, is doing in gaming because she's celebrating a 1-month anniversary of her Twitch channel. And we'll try to keep the link to Nomad Ann's channel down below, and we'll talk about what she's playing as well. So she just finished the Obduction series. That's Obduction starting with an O, which is made by the same people that made Myst. And she enjoyed that quite a bit. Apparently, the Myst community doesn't like it as much as the actual Myst series games. But she enjoyed it quite a bit, has quite a complex story, a little bit more of a scientific vibe and a little bit less of a mystical vibe. And it involves a little bit of an isekai story where you're a human transported to a colony, a mining colony of humans on an alien planet, and you got to deal with alien wars and all kinds of different things. But it's still an exploration and puzzle solving game. Sounds pretty cool. And you can watch it on her channel if you like to. Also, she's moving on now to a game called Amerizone and generally the Siberia series, which is a cool series of adventure games that started with Siberia. I guess it started with Amerizone, but Siberia is the first of the Siberia series, where a young woman goes on a train trip, I believe, through Siberia and looking for living mammoths that are rumored to be somewhere there. And she has a kind of mystical journey of sorts to try and discover the mammoth. And a lot of trains breaking down, as I remember. Ann and I played Siberia 1 and 2 together, I'm pretty sure. Maybe 3. But it was a long time ago, so I've forgotten all the details. Anyway, cool games. If you want to watch Ann and help her solve puzzles on her Twitch channel, she's usually broadcasting Pacific time here, I believe, from like 11 to 3 or 4 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think is when she's streaming. But anyway, you can go check out her channel and see for sure and participate in that kind of fun. Help grow her channel. That would be cool. All right, life in general. Well, this was July 4th weekend, which is sort of the Super Bowl for gift shops here in Ocean Shores. It is by far the busiest day of the year. A ton of people come out to the beaches here to light fireworks on 4th of July. I saw some drone footage of it. It is, I don't know if I could say it's celebratory. To me, it looks almost apocalyptic. You know, so there's all these cars parked all over the beach, and there's fireworks going off and smoke in the air, and the breeze blows it all inland, so it looks like, you know, the after effect of flak fire. It looks like a war zone to me. But, you know, pretty cool if you love fireworks. Also, they set part of the beach on fire again this year, which is not so great, but generally the beach is a pretty safe place. Those fires aren't going to expand too much. There is kind of this grassland up from the beach, and it is delicate habitat. So we lost about 5 acres of that, which I don't think is probably too bad, but, you know, it's never a great thing. But it's really good for the local economy. It is the single best business day for the shop that I work at. And, you know, it's important for people to have jobs and everything. So it's always a balance here. But it was a very busy week for me. I saw so many people, talked to so many folks on both Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is my shift area. So I'm pretty wiped, but ready for the next 3 days where I can relax a little bit, work on Shotgun Fantasy, and have a good time. So yeah, just, you know, these days when I make the video is always a transitional day for me, and making the video is part of transitioning from that work week to my other work week. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope you had a good 4th of July and Independence Day, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.